Hello, everyone. I'm Gokben Aydilek. I'm a research assistant and a PhD student at the Department of Economics at Gebze Technical University. My main area of interest research is health economics. Specifically, I'm mostly interested in maternal and child health. The subject that I will be presenting today, again, in the area of health economics, focusing on maternal health and child health. I'll be sharing my screen with you. So the title of our study is The Effect of Maternal Education on Disease Morbidity Among Preschoolers. I'm doing this research with my amazing PhD advisor, Deniz Yurtseven. This is the second chapter of my thesis. So the outline is the classical outline for our presentation. The aim of our study is to find out the causal impact of maternal education on children's well-being. For this, in order to capture the causal impact of education, we use the change in the compulsory schooling law in Turkey as an instrumental variable. So we are all familiar with the fact that maternal education has a very crucial role in the well-being of children. And child health is the key predictor of adult well-being and productivity, so it's very much important. Especially in developing nations, human capital is integral in assisting to eliminate poverty and inequality. Therefore, it is really important to properly interpret the relationship between maternal education and the well-being of children. Previous literature suggests a very, very strong relationship between maternal education and children's health. And also a study conducted in Turkey actually presents the very impact of maternal education on infant mortality. It suggests that it reduces the infant mortality and actually increases the overall physical well-being of children. Also, other studies shows a robust positive relationship between maternal education and various health outcomes of children, such as healthy birth weight, increased height, immunization, being resistant to infectious diseases such as respiratory disease and diarrhea that we are also looking at in this study. Though when it comes to mortality, it is something very severe. Contracting infectious diseases might not sound that much severe in developed countries. However, again, in the US, a report by Centers for Disease Control shows that 32% of hospitalization among children under the age of 5 is actually caused by respiratory illnesses or diarrhea. It's an old statistics, but like 15 years old statistics, but it doesn't mean that it is not valid at the moment. In addition to the economic burden of such illnesses, those illnesses can actually develop into more serious problems, and such as hearing impairment due to repetitive ear infections or asthma in the long run. Further, such infections actually require the child to use antibiotics starting from a very, very early age. And this might cause a problem of antibiotic resistance for that child when that person grows into an adult or an elderly. So far, no studies are focusing on the causal relationship between maternal education and the morbidity of infectious diseases among children. Most of the studies are actually focusing on the correlation between maternal education and child's health outcomes. So this is the first study to investigate this link, which is the main contribution of our study. So in order to check for the causal relationship, we use the compulsory schooling law change that occurred in 1996, which required people to complete 8 years of schooling rather than 5 years of schooling. Literature review. In the UK, a study conducted by Spencer shows that mothers with no education, actually, their children are at a higher risk for respiratory problems between the ages of 0 to 2 and 3 to 11. In Ghana, higher maternal education significantly and consistently reduces the incidence of diarrhea, acute respiratory infection, and fever among children below the age of 5. In Brazil, also, infants born to women with little to no schooling, deaths due to diarrhea, pneumonia, and other infectious diseases were particularly common. In Australia, which is a developed country, children of women with no education or whose highest level of education was a secondary school or trade had respectively a 59 to 57% increased probability of contracting a respiratory infectious disease or injury in the first year of life, which is quite high. In Bangladesh, again, maternal education actually decreases the probability that the child will die due to acute diarrhea or any other infectious diseases. So it increases this child's survival. However, again, those studies only check for correlation and they are far from capturing the causality, since education per se actually carries unobservables such as ability, which is expected to affect the decisions and achievements of an individual, in here the mother. So by using CSL as IV for maternal education, Güneş finds that maternal education is beneficial for the health of the infants and children by reducing the mortality and increasing the physical well-being of children, but they didn't check for the infectious diseases case. So therefore, we are checking since there is a gap in the literature in this area. However, contrary to the expectation, contrary to the findings in the literature, we find that maternal education actually does increase the chances of catching infectious diseases among children between the ages of 0 to 6. So we wanted to explain this very odd, interesting finding that we came up with. And we thought that daycare sentence attendance might be the mechanism behind this very finding. So the data we use is the Turkish Health Survey from 2019, which is provided by Turkstat. This is a cross-sectional household survey conducted face-to-face. And there are around 23,000 individuals between the ages of 0 to 98. And only individuals above the age of 15 years are interviewed. The compulsory schooling law that we use is actually came into act in 1996. So children who are born in 1986, they might be affected by the law. However, they might not be affected either. So we exclude those people depending on their birth date. So we exclude those and we use 1987 year born people as the cut point for our compulsory schooling law analysis as an instrumental variable. The methodology, continuing. So the 1997 education reform is an ideal instrumental variable to capture the effect of education on several outcomes, since there was no change in the curricula of students who were and were not affected by the reform. In addition, there is no reason to think that children born before and after 1986 are different than each other. Thus, we are using the change in the compulsory schooling law in 1996 as the instrument for a mother's level of education. Here we see that it's a very good instrument for education, as there is a clear jump in here at 1987, while when we exclude 1986. So the methodology, the first stage model in here is this: S is the whether a mother is born in year M, completed 8 years of schooling or not. And the other variables are age, the age of the child, female is the sex of the child, mom age is the age of the mother of the child, and age square. And gamma is the birth year fixed effect. X is the current region that the respondent resides, so we also check for this as well. Reform is whether the person is affected by the reform or not. And epsilon IM shows the weighted error terms. So the second stage modeling here, disease shows the dummy variable of a child having upper or lower respiratory disease or diarrhea in the last 6 months. And in here, for schooling, we use the reform. If the reform actually explains the schooling of the mother, then we are using it as an instrumental variable in our second stage model. Our results. Here we have the children who are born to mothers with the date of birth ranging from 1981 to 1992, excluding 1986 and 1997. In here, we are checking effect of maternal education on lower respiratory disease among those children who are between the ages of 0 to 6. So we see that actually in the Probit model, we see that if a mother completed at least middle school, then actually it increases the probability of a child having lower respiratory disease in the last 6 months. And in the OLS model, we still have the same positive and significant result. For the IV Probit, we use the reform. If the mother is affected by the reform, then the education. For education, we are using that very reform, and we expect the coefficient to be higher than the Probit model. And it's in here, it is higher, and it is significant. Again, significant and positive. It suggests that there is actually a positive impact, like in a negative way, on the probability of a child getting infected by a lower respiratory disease. In endogeneity test, when we check for the Hausmann score, it suggests that actually there is an endogenite problem in the original Probit model, so it's better to use the IV Probit. For the upper respiratory disease, we still see this positive coefficient in here. So it suggests that children with mothers with a higher level of education, at least completing middle school, have a higher probability of getting infected by upper respiratory disease. And again, for diarrhea, we still see that interesting finding. And in here, we thought that education actually increases the probability of a woman being active in the labor market. And if a mother is active in the labor market, then the child might attend the daycare centers. So maybe the driving force behind it is the daycare center attendance, we thought. So we checked for it. We checked for the literature. And there are some literature in the medical discipline suggesting that children attending daycare centers, they have an increased risk of asthma and also increased risk of upper respiratory tract infections. Also, a study conducted in Japan suggests that maternal full-time self-employment was related to higher prevalence of asthma in children, which was not seen with part-time work. Also in the US, attendance at large daycare was associated with more common colds during the preschool years. However, they also found that it actually, that kind of antigens that are created during those common cold infections in the child's body, they actually protect the child up to a certain age of 13 from other infections. So we checked the descriptives for this phenomena, for the explanation of our interesting finding. And we see that here in table 8, we see the percentages of children currently attending daycare centers by level of maternal education. We group them. And you see in here that the percentage of daycare center attendance actually increases by the level of education, by the increase in the level of education of the mother. And percentage of children between the ages of 0 to 15 ever attending daycare centers, again, the percentage increases by the level of maternal education. And in here, we checked for the percentages for infectious diseases occurring in daycare centers or at home, or just not going at daycare centers. We see in here that for respiratory diseases, both upper and lower, the percentages at daycare centers are a lot higher than those who are not attending the daycare centers. For the area, though there is a very small difference, however, daycare centers seems a bit more safe, a bit safer. The results, we checked the effect of maternal education and employment separately on a child attending daycare centers. Again, in the same sample. In here, we see that a mother who completed at least middle school, in that case, the child goes to daycare centers. There is that positive coefficient in here. And if a mother is employed, then again, the coefficients are very, very close. So if a mother is employed, then the child goes to daycare centers again. And the effect of maternal education on maternal employment, we checked for it, and we see that, yes, a mother completing at least middle school actually does participate in the labor markets. The probability is a lot higher. So our explanation for our interesting finding is that mothers who are affected by the change in the compulsory schooling law, who actually had a higher level of education, actually do go to the labor market and participate in there, and their children go to the daycare centers. Therefore, they catch infectious diseases at a higher rate than the children who are actually growing at home. So the conclusion, again, the children attending daycare centers, they are more prone to catching infectious diseases. There is a causal relationship between maternal education and disease morbidity among preschoolers. And the mechanism behind this, the driving force that is suggested, is the daycare center attendance. However, under no circumstances, I want to emphasize this part very much, should this finding suggest that it will be better that women shy away from employment and take care of their children at home. We don't suggest it. I mean, our findings does not imply that at all. It only shows that better behavioral and sanitary policies should be implemented at daycare facilities to limit the transmission of such diseases, both for children, their families, and the society as a whole. Thank you.